Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the crypto world, which, is always moving fast. We're putting a laser focus on XRP, its legal fights, the tech behind it, and yeah, it's pushed into the mainstream. We've got some really interesting stuff for you, covering court rulings, some surprising moves in the housing market, and big policy shifts that honestly could change how you deal with digital assets. Following crypto news often feels like, well, like watching a soap opera. Lots of drama, right? Like, take the latest news about Judge Torres and her XRP decision. So much buildup, and then XRP dips, what, 3%? After all that anticipation, it felt almost quiet compared to the usual market noise.
Absolutely. That hoopla, as you called it, the immediate reaction, it often distracts from the really big currents moving underneath. What we're going to try and uncover today is that behind the daily ups and downs, the things that look like setbacks, there are these huge shifts happening quietly. And they're paving the way for some profound changes, especially for assets like XRP that are built for, actual use.
Okay, let's unpack that, starting with that big headline grabber. Judge Torres just said no to a joint request from Ripple and the SEC. It was for something called an indicative ruling, which basically means she's keeping the lawsuit running, not letting them take a shortcut to wrap things up. We saw this everywhere. Block Media reported it June 27th, 2025, and channels like Oscar Ramos, Crypto Eerie were all over it around then. So what exactly was this indicative ruling they wanted, and why is her saying no such a big deal?
Right, so the indicative ruling, it's basically like asking the judge for a sneak peek, a hint about how she might rule on a proposed settlement or a specific point.
Yeah.
You could potentially avoid a full trial on those bits. But what's really fascinating here is why Judge Torres said no. Oscar Ramos has reported her saying, pretty bluntly, private deals don't erase public judgment. Meaning, she thinks a private deal, and they were aiming to cut Ripple's penalty by 60%, get rid of an earlier injunction, couldn't just sweep aside her previous public rulings. She basically said, look, you guys don't have the authority to just agree not to follow the court's final decision. And importantly, they hadn't shown any exceptional circumstances to make her step in right now.
So very by the book.
Very by the book, which, some folks on channels like CryptPTO with Clayuz and Zach Rector were cynically saying might just be her wanting the whole process to play out fully, maybe a bit of ego involved, who knows?
Yeah. Okay, so she wants the full legal process. Fine. But what does this really mean for XRP itself, its legal status? Is this a major roadblock for Ripple? Or is the market just doing its usual thing, overreacting to the case dragging on, which, let's be honest, many expected anyway?
That's the critical question, isn't it? Is it a real setback or just noise? Stuart Alderoty, Ripple's top lawyer, he came out pretty quick. Digital Asset Investor covered this.
Yeah.
He said the ball is back in their court.
Okay.
He laid out two options. Either the SEC drops their appeal about those old historic institutional sales, or they push ahead with it. But, and this is the really important part for you listening, he stressed, either way, XRP's legal status as not a security remains unchanged.
Right. That's the key takeaway.
Exactly. This denial. It's mostly about past sales, the institutional ones, and the fine. It's not about the fundamental status of XRP for future sales, the programmatic ones. So yeah, more delays expected, like Oscar Ramos said, but that core clarity on XRP not being a security, that's still solid. It's funny, actually, some Bitcoiners who are often pretty cynical about altcoins were almost happy about this, seeing it as, proof the legal mess continues, but maybe missing the point about the clarity Ripple already got.
Interesting take. And that clarity you just mentioned about XRP's status, it seems like it's actually opening doors now, maybe in places we didn't expect, because when there's more regulatory certainty, even the really traditional industries start paying attention. And you see that happening right now in the US housing market. Seriously, imagine using your crypto to buy a house. There are some huge moves happening. Sources like Altcoin Daily, Moon Lambo, Crypto with Clayuz were all reporting this around June 26th, 27th, 2025. Tell us about the shift.
Yeah, this is more than just a news blip. It's a fundamental change in how traditional finance is starting to look at digital assets. The FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, they've basically told Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the mortgage giants, to start considering crypto assets as actual collateral when people apply for mortgages.
Wow.
They're calling it historic. And it fits right in with President Trump's stated goal of making the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. So what this means for you, if you hold crypto, is you might soon be able to list those digital assets as part of your net worth for a mortgage application. You might not have to sell your crypto just to make a down payment.
That's huge.
It's a massive step for crypto's legitimacy in mainstream lending. It moves it from just being speculative stuff to actual verifiable wealth on a mortgage application.
That really does sound like a game changer. No more selling your XRP right when you need it for a down payment. But okay, playing devil's advocate here. Are there any catches? Any cynical footnotes that maybe limit this or show traditional finance is still being cautious?
Well, there's always nuance, right? A key point is that the directive says only crypto held on U.S. regulated exchanges will qualify.
Ah, okay.
Which makes sense. It's a safeguard for volatility, for compliance, like Moon Lambo pointed out. But yeah, it's a trade-off if you're someone who really prefers self-custody, keeping your keys yourself.
Right.
Still, the bigger picture here is this massive acceptance of crypto as a legit asset class, right in the heart of traditional finance. And connecting it back, it just highlights that growing regulatory clarity we're seeing in the U.S. It's creating a path for TradFi to actually use digital assets, not just watch them.
And speaking of clarity, it seems like the U.S. is also getting really close on stablecoin laws. Block Media reported June 27th, 2025, and channels like Encash Official and Scripto with Clayuz were talking about something called the Genius Act. Sounds like it could really change the game for digital money.
Yeah, the Genius Act. It's a big stablecoin bill. It's already passed the Senate. Now it's headed to the House. Former President Trump has actually been pushing for it to pass by August 1st. The goal is getting real regulatory clarity maybe by the end of the summer. And this isn't just about stablecoins themselves. It's like the clearest signal yet that the U.S. is building a proper regulated bridge for traditional finance to plug into the crypto economy.
An on-ramp.
Exactly. It's pivotal because stablecoins are like the engine of the whole crypto ecosystem, right? They're the main way value moves around. And now the big financial institutions are actively, almost aggressively, jumping in. The market's already huge. Monthly transfers hit, what, $2.82 trillion, market cap over $250 billion. And you see players like Ripple positioning themselves. Block Media noted they just issued 12 million of their RLUSD tokens.
Okay, this sounds incredibly bullish for stablecoins, for the whole crypto market infrastructure, but let's put on our super cynical hat for a second. Does this really help XRP directly? Or are the big banks just going to build their own little walled gardens, create their own stablecoins, and kind of bypass solutions like XRP?
That's a really important and, cynical question to ask. Because while the stablecoin rules are great for the market overall, some traditional players are, predictably, building their own things. Like Scripto with Clayuz reported major South Korean banks are getting ready to issue their own one-base stablecoin.
Right. Instead of using something existing.
Exactly. It shows that banks, while they like the idea of stablecoins for efficiency, they often prioritize control, stability, regulatory ease. They prefer their own pegged assets under their control rather than using existing, potentially more volatile cryptocurrencies for big transfers. They want blockchain efficiency, but inside their own walls.
So walled gardens it is, potentially?
Potentially, yes. But here's the twist. Even if they build these walled gardens, these new bank-issued stablecoins, they still need efficient, reliable, compliant ways to move money between banks across borders. And that's exactly where XRP's strengths lie: fast, cheap, compliant cross-border payments. The infrastructure is already there. It's about the rails underneath, not just the stablecoin on top. XRP is positioned to be those rails.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's dig deeper into that, into XRP's underlying strength. Forget the legal stuff, the regulations for a minute. What's actually happening with Ripple's ecosystem, the tech itself? We heard about some big upgrades from Jungle Inc. Crypto, Oscar Ramos, Crypto Erie around June 26th, 27th. Sounds like they're building something serious.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, the actual building.
Yeah.
Ripple is pushing hard to expand the ecosystem, make XRP more useful. They've partnered with Wormhole, that's a big name in interoperability, to connect the XRP Ledger to like 35 other blockchains. That massively opens things up.
Okay.
And the XRP Ledger itself is getting major upgrades. Native AMMs, automated market makers, basically tools for better liquidity, easier decentralized trading right on the ledger.
Right, the DeFi stuff.
Exactly. And clawbacks, that sounds a bit intense, but it's actually crucial for regulated institutions. It lets them reverse transactions under very specific conditions. Think compliance, error fixing.
Ah, okay, so institutional friendly features.
Precisely. And then there's the upcoming EVM sidechain support. That makes it compatible with the huge Ethereum ecosystem, all those developers and apps. It's turning the XRPL into a proper platform for DeFi, even for serious institutional finance. Plus, Ripple's investment arm. They've apparently poured over $2 billion into crypto companies, acquisitions, investments. It shows they're committed to the whole space growing, not just XRP in isolation. Like Brad Garlinghouse said in their Crypto Eerie clip, these aren't small tweaks. They're fundamental changes aimed at massive utility, building the highways for future finance.
Okay, so definitely not standing still. They're building the capacity for big things, but how are the institutions reacting? Are they actually using this stuff or planning to? Especially with the legal case still technically open? Are they finally loading up, like the bulls always say?
It's a fair question, and the data suggests, yes, something's happening. Working Money Channel pointed out that wallets holding over 1 million XRP, they've hit a new all-time high, over 2,850 of them.
That's significant.
That's not just small investors. It points towards serious institutional accumulation. It suggests the big players are quietly getting positioned, realizing, as the channel put it, XRP's position is set up and is very, very bullish. And then there's the ETF buzz. It's getting loud. Jungle Link Crypto, Working Money Channel. They highlighted Polymarket predictions like a 93 to 98% chance of a spot XRP ETF approval by December 2025.
Wow, that high.
Yeah. And Bloomberg analysts are hinting a decision could come as early as July. Even JP Morgan put out an estimate, $8 billion in inflows if an XRP ETF gets the green light.
$8 billion.
Right. So this isn't just wishful thinking anymore. It's a strong signal that the market sees XRP as next in line after Bitcoin and Ethereum for that institutional-grade investment product, driven by that unique legal clarity it has, plus its real-world payment utility. The smart money seems to be placing its bets.
Okay, let's zoom out one last time. Look at the bigger picture, the economy, politics. We're seeing some mixed signals in the economic data, but also some surprisingly positive noises from officials about crypto. What does this wider environment mean for the crypto market and for XRP specifically?
Yeah, connecting the dots on the macro level is interesting right now. And maybe a bit cynical too. So US Q1 GDP got revised down, ag 0.5%. Block Media reported that June 26th. That signals maybe some economic cooling, which could influence the Fed. But then paradoxically, the stock market, S&P 500 and NASDAQ, they're still hanging out near all-time highs, according to Block Media on the 27th. It's a weird mix.
Yeah, it is.
But here's a key thing. Fed Chair Jerome Powell, he's sounded much more positive on crypto lately.
Yeah.
Encash official and Crypto with Clayuz picked up on him saying banks are basically free to conduct crypto activities and provide banking services to the crypto industry.
That is a shift from before.
It's a significant shift.
Yeah.
It suggests maybe the financial gates are loosening, perhaps strategically, to bring crypto into the fold, maybe to integrate it, maybe eventually control it more effectively.
Yeah.
So with this backdrop, some economic caution, but unexpected openness from the Fed, what's the outlook for XRP's price? Analysts keep throwing out these huge targets, but then we constantly hear about altcoins being weak compared to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of that?
That's the million-dollar question for investors, right?
Right.
Bitcoin's been strong, consolidating near its highs. Institutions are buying it up. But for the altcoin market, yeah, including XRP, it has felt a bit soft recently. Crypto with Clayuz mentioned this softness. But a lot of analysts think this is just temporary, a consolidation before the next move. Looking longer term, channels like Working Money Channel, Digital Outlook, they see XRP even trading around $2.11 now as really undervalued compared to its potential utility. You're seeing some aggressive long-term price targets again, $5 to $7, some even saying $10 or $20.
Right, those familiar targets.
Yeah. And the argument now is stronger, maybe, because XRP has much more presence on U.S. exchanges this time around, unlike past runs that were heavily driven by South Korea. The cynical view here is that XRP was kind of deliberately suppressed, held underwater by the lawsuit and regulatory uncertainty. Now, with that clearing up with a more level playing field, it's set for a big rebound based on actual use. And you could even argue, cynically perhaps, that all this political talk about wanting to weaken the U.S. dollar, which Levi mentioned, might push more people towards alternatives like XRP as a hedge, boosting demand that way too.
Wow, okay. What a deep dive that was. We really tried to cut through all the daily noise, the headlines. What emerges is a crypto market that, yeah, it has its crazy swings, its political games, its cynicism, but fundamentally it seems to be moving strategically towards mainstream use, from house buying to new laws to building out that core tech. XRP looks like it's right in the thick of that transformation.
Absolutely. The story seems pretty clear. Traditional finance isn't just watching anymore. It's actively integrating blockchain and digital assets. And it's happening faster now. XRP, with its proven speed, its focus on institutions, its growing ecosystem, it just looks uniquely placed to benefit from that shift, even with the market doing its usual volatile dance in the short term. So the big question for you, the listener, the learner, is really this. With institutions getting involved, regulations getting clearer, and the technology getting stronger, are we just seeing crypto slowly become normal, fitting into the old system?
Right.
Or are we actually on the edge of something much bigger? An explosive, multi-trillion-dollar rethink of asset values led by the cryptos that are built for real-world work.
That is definitely something powerful to think about. Remember, try not to get swayed by every single news headline. Short-term price guessing, not really a human skill. Look long-term if you want to last long and aim high. And hey, if you got value out of this deep dive, go ahead and hit that like button. Who knows? Maybe it'll help Ripple go up. I say. Until next time, stay curious.